Welcome, fellow comic fans, to another edition of Wednesday Warriors, the show where I go through the weekly comic solicitations and pick what books stand out to me and what I feel like is worth your money. I'm your host, as always, Alex, and we've got ourselves a regular Murderer's Row today on the picks. It's not as many as some of my lengthier, episodes, but I will preface that each one of these are going to be higher ticket items, so if you follow, my recommendations to a T, it's going to cost you pretty big this week. So, sorry in advance if, you're a little loose with the wallet this week. So we're going to get started with something that I haven't had the chance to talk about yet, and at some point I'm going to have to revisit in a review capacity. It is Archie Volume 4 from Mark Waid's run. This volume appears to have Pete Woods as the artist, and I'm a little behind on this series right now. I believe I have Volume 3, or maybe I haven't picked it up yet. It had the artist from Morning Glories attached to it for Volume 3. I'm not familiar with Pete Woods' work in particular, but what I can say is that Archie has continuously surprised me as being one of the best comics to get a relaunch in recent memory. It is a fantastic book for people who have never read Archie at all, and I am confident that this will once again be another excellent chapter in Mark Waid's run on Archie. It is retailing for $17.99 and collects issues 18 through 22. So that's a little less than what it normally collects, but normally the trades cost $20, so there's a little bit of a price difference to warrant that. And after this, actually, we're going straight into DC again. Not that many independent books besides Image that stood out to me from the pile. So, actually, I even trimmed down DC a bit. There were a couple of other trades I'll get into in a second. But the first one is an omnibus. And I remember recommending, I forget if it was last week or the week before, but it was the New Teen Titans Volume 6 or 7. From the Marv Wolfman and George Perez run. Well, for those people who wanted to start from the beginning before they picked up that volume, conveniently, DC has you covered. They are reprinting the New Teen Titans Omnibus, and looks like they actually got it for quite a deal here. So it's going to be collecting the first 16 issues of the run, and it is going to be going for $75. So that's a pretty good deal as far as omnibuses go. The DC ones tend to be pretty reasonable, all things considered. So if you've been meaning to pick up the classic Teen Titans run that everyone has been constantly praising for as long as I can remember getting into comics, this is probably a good place for you to start. After that, we've got ourselves another DC book, and this is where I kind of trimmed it a bit for my list, honestly. There were 4 Batman trades that came out this week, and, there's a lot of Batman stuff out there, but that was just kind of weird recommending a couple at once. So feel free to check out some of the other options, but the one that stood out to me amongst the pack was Batman Shadow of the Bat Volume 2 from Alan Grant, Norm Brayfogle, and I believe Brian Stelfreeze did the covers, though it doesn't mention that in the solicitation. And this is kind of the Batman that I'm the most attached to. I tend to be most interested in the 80s to 90s era Batman, where a lot of kind of the classic aesthetics of the character tended to show up that are, most of the modern stuff tends to branch out from the 70s onwards, but when a lot of people think of the characters, it's typically the late 80s through 90s versions that a lot of people tend to have a big fondness for, and myself included. This collects issues 13 through 24 and is retailing for $29.99. That's a little pricier than normal, but I'm sure you could probably find a good deal for that trade. And like I said, it is the classic era Batman that I have an attachment to, so I had to give that one the shout out. Now to Image, and we are down to our final 2. And actually, both of them are going to be Image. Image had a pretty good lineup this week. Fortunately, well, I'll save this for the next one, but the first Image comic to talk about is The Old Guard from Greg Rucka and Leandro Fernandez. And this comic is one that I read the first issue of and was really impressed with, but I haven't gotten around to, picking up the other monthlies, so this is going to be perfect for me. and it deals with the concept of immortality with a various group of soldiers. I'm going to kind of leave it at that because issue 1 had a really nice cliffhanger that I don't want to spoil, but it's going to collect issues 1 through 5 of this, and it is going for $16.99, which is a pretty good deal. Looks like it's going to be an ongoing series. I forgot to mention it is book 1 is how it's solicited. I'm a big fan of Greg Rucka as a writer. I'm not as familiar with Leandro's work, but I was really impressed with how issue 1 turned out, so if you're a fan of Rucka and you're a fan of Image Comics, you should definitely check it out. And finally, I'm really happy, just a small note, that I decided to re-look over the solicitations because this one was not in here over the weekend, and I'm really glad I decided to record this at the last minute and find this one. I found that The Other Side is getting solicited for release this week, and personally, I am ecstatic about this, guys. This is one of Jason Aaron's first comic book mini-series that he ever got to do on the independent circuit. It might be the first one he ever got to do. And it's with Jason Aaron doing the writing again, and art from Cameron Stewart, which you already know it's going to look fantastic when Cameron's involved with it. The basic plot from what I'm seeing here has to do with the Vietnam War told from both sides of the conflict. It's been a comic from his and Cameron Stewart's careers that I have been incredibly interested in picking up, but was pretty badly out of print for a little bit, so I'm excited that it's getting the nice, spiffy Image hardcover treatment that Scene of the Crime got from Brubaker and Michael Lark, respectively. I will absolutely 100% be picking this up on Friday night. Actually, just a little inside baseball for anyone who's just really dying to know, but ironically enough, I do this series Wednesday Warriors where I go over the weekly comics solicitation for people, but because of my own work schedule, I actually don't get to pick up comics on Wednesdays like I used to anymore. It's kind of sad, and I mean, I love spotlighting new comics for people to pick up, whether it's on Wednesday or, whenever you go to the comic book store. But, as I was just saying this, I'm like, I can't wait to go, pick up my, trade of, or I guess hardcover of The Other Side on Friday night at midnight or Saturday morning, and it's like, wow, that just totally outed myself as, not being a Wednesday Warrior on a show called Wednesday Warriors. So, at some point, I will get back into that schedule. It's just purely because of work that I'm not as much into that as I used to be. So, yeah, that got a little bit more inside baseball than I meant to, but there you have it. We got ourselves a bunch of good books for you to pick up. They're all going to be a little pricey on the wallet, but believe me, I think each one of them is worth your time and attention. So thank you, as always, for listening to this. Feel free to give us a like or comment or share if you enjoyed this, and you can even dislike if you didn't. That's fine, too. And also feel free to comment about your pull list if you got to pick up anything this weekend. I'd be curious to see it, and thank you guys as always for watching. I will see you next week.